Hello, and welcome to this channel's first video. If you just want to see the flight and don't care about the explanations, just skip ahead to part 2. In this video, I will be demonstrating some of KSP's mechanics and idiosyncrasies using Logitech's SpaceX launch pack. Essentially what we have here is a KSP version of the Falcon 9 v1.1 launch vehicle mounting the Dragon version 2 manned capsule. In real life, this orbital rocket is capable of resupply missions to the International Space Station and returning. It's certainly not capable of doing what we will be doing with it here in KSP. What is that, you ask? Why, landing on Mun and returning, of course. When I first started playing KSP, I assumed that the system in which it was set was a fairly accurate, if incomplete, representation of our own. As I got better at the game, I learned that it is in fact much reduced in scale, and because of this, the delta-v requirements for example, entering a stable Kerbal parking orbit are much reduced compared to those of Earth. To illustrate that, as well as to cover some of the basic KSP mechanics, I decided to fly a Dragon capsule on top of a Falcon 9 to Mun and back. A brief word about delta-v. You'll hear this term repeated over and over if you play enough KSP, but relatively few guides take the time to explain what it actually is. Delta-v is, in literal terms, change in speed. Speed is all important when talking about space travel, and it is speed, not altitude, that allows for orbital flight. In fact, the only reason rockets in real life bother going up at all is to get above the atmosphere so they can attain greater speed. Attaining greater speed is the fundamental reason for the most important maneuver in orbital spaceflight, the gravity turn. To achieve orbit on Earth requires something like 10,000 meters per second change in velocity, delta v. In KSP, it requires something like 4,500 meters per second change in velocity. This doesn't fully account for atmospheric effects, but it's easier as a shorthand to simply account for atmospheric drag as additional required delta v. Our rocket is a Logitech SpaceX Falcon 9 version 1.1 with a Dragon version 2 capsule, fully loaded with 7 Kerbonauts. It's mostly unmodified, even retaining this trademark SpaceX landing legs, which we will not be using. Our first stage will remain in orbit. The sole modification to this rocket, with the exception of some stage reordering necessary to get it to work properly, is the addition of a MechJeb module for flight control. MechJeb is a great mod that helps smooth out maneuvers by doing them automatically. However, for the fullest understanding of orbital mechanics that are fundamental to KSP, I recommend not using it until you've landed on Duna or Eve at least. For this flight, our plan is to take off, achieve a 100-kilometer parking orbit, transfer to Mun, circularize our orbit there at about 30 kilometers, land using the second stage's reusable landing legs, do an EVA, take off, and return to Kerbal via a few aerobrake maneuvers. If you didn't understand some of that, it's okay, I'll cover it all as we go along. My initial reason for making this video was that I recognized a dearth of guides online explaining the mechanics of KSP to lay people. Most people don't start playing this game already familiar with Tchaikovsky's rocket equation, delta v, or even what an orbit is. A century of very entertaining but unrealistic Hollywood films gives the impression that spaceflight is a matter of mounting a silver, lozenge-shaped rocket and just pointing it up. Starting with this video, I hope to cover some of that ground so that others can enjoy KSP to its fullest. It's not rocket science. Well, it is, but anyone can do it. Now, without further ado, this is landing on and returning from Mun with a Falcon 9 version 1.1 and Dragon version 2 capsule.